Like most people, the majority are in favor of mass deportations. Like we want illegals out of the country.
And that's something that people are going to hold that. Do you think that people are going to hold that opinion if prices go up, for example?
Some will, some won't.
I mean,
I think that you're going to. I think you're going to see a number of. I think there are going to be some short-term hardships, and I think people are okay with that if there's a way out or there's a plan. I felt like with Biden there was no plan, and there was no sort of like, we're going to get rid of these people and we're going to have to adjust to it. There was no talk like that, and I mean it was Musk, but that's exactly what Musk said. Is like, there'll be some short-term hardship throughout this thing. He was talking about tariffs in particular. Called it like shock therapy, but I don't care what it costs. I don't care what it costs to secure the border and to make sure that we know who's, coming into this country, and we stop the literal invasion of millions.
The border issue is separate
and millions
from the,
of people.
Illegal immigration issue. I mean,
no, they're very intertwined. Like illegal immigration is allowed to be a huge thing because the Biden administration. Illegal immigration and a lack of border security, like those are inexplicably linked, or inextricably linked.
Illegal are here overstaying a visa, and I feel like what Republicans do is conflate the issue at the border with they conflate like our asylum laws with illegal immigration. So when we talk about like the asylum laws, we have laws on the books that if somebody shows up and they request asylum and they meet a certain criteria, they are afforded a court date. And our system is so backlogged now that oftentimes they have to wait 5 to 8 years before they get a court date. And while they're waiting for that, they're allowed into the country. And I feel like a lot of Republicans are calling that like those are illegals flooding into the country.
It is. It's like you don't want them here. Like the Remain in Mexico policy. Like don't like. The idea that you let in hundreds of thousands or millions of people and go, we'll get to you in 10 years. Meanwhile, take WIC, take Medicaid, take housing vouchers. Like, no, like that's an absurd cost for the American public to have to foot.
I have a stat because you said that the overstaying of the visas was a higher number. It was 850,000 overstayed in 2022. There were 2.7 million illegal border crossings the same year. I mean, that's just the border. That's just the border.
Your data here,
that's a huge amount.
Department of Homeland Security.
And this is one of those things that the left loses on.
Real quick though, like the asylum laws were on the books when Trump was president. Like he talks about catch and release. His administration did the same thing because you're legally obligated to do that. The bipartisan immigration bill that was negotiated actually addressed those asylum laws, tightened them up, hired more border security agents, hired more judges, hired more lawyers to adjudicate these claims. And they ultimately wanted to reduce the time from 5 to 8 years to 3 months. And, Trump was the one that spiked that bill. So,
yeah.
Hey, Hutch, I have a question about that bill. So I think that bill would have been good for America. If that same bill comes up during this Republican-controlled government, do you think it passes? Will they just flip because now it's a Trump accomplishment? Exact same bill.
That would be hard to defend because they were making a big deal of the fact that it was like, so it was written that you could shut the border down if you averaged at least 4,000 people showing up, not crossing illegally, showing up and applying for asylum. If that was 4,000 for 7 days in a row, then they would shut the border down automatically or gave DHS the authority to do that for 2 weeks, I believe. They made a big stink about that. And so they may do a similar bill and then bring that number like way down. I don't even know.
If he were to try and push that exact same bill as some Trump accomplishment, I would decry that as stupid as well. Like the whole point of that was, most of that was boondoggle spending for Ukraine and foreign countries. Like a huge amount of it.
That part still got
boondoggle
passed.
Spending. That part still gets passed. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
The money laundering part gets passed.
The immigration part we couldn't pass. But
the issue, I think,
we're skipping the fun part.
I think that Democrats and the left is losing a lot on this immigration issue because it's very popular to deport illegals and to protect our own border. And when you see a lot of like mealy mouthing, no, it's popular among the American public survey wise.
Right, I have numbers on that. I looked it up. I was curious if Taylor was right. Let me just go real quick, Hutch. 54 to 42 in favor. So those are the numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a winning issue for the right because I don't even see this as necessarily partisan. It is in our situation, with our current structure, but like the desire to protect your country's borders is the only thing that makes a country a country. Like otherwise you're just an open economic zone. Like you need to take people who are here illegally, many of them benefiting from housing vouchers, Medicaid, free school. They're not a part of the system, so they're not paying in a lot of ways, and they're taking a lot out. And that's a huge negative for America.
Are you saying illegal immigrants are getting Medicaid?
Illegal immigrants do qualify for Medicaid, yes. They qualify for Medicaid, housing vouchers, and WIC, which is like free food at the grocery store.
What's the fun part we're missing, Kyle? You said
they're going to start building the deportation camps in Texas soon. Texas has already offered the land.
No bullshit. No camps. Straight back. Not
you
even.
You got to like.
Not a big bada boom.
You got to sort them, Taylor. You got to figure out where to send them. You can't just send a Somali to Nicaragua.
This is my
the language,
Kyle. This was my idea that we send them all to our enemies. We send 20 million South Americans.
Go back a little bit because illegal immigrants don't qualify for any federal aid program, including Medicaid. So there are programs like Medi-Cal, like state-run programs, and each state can determine if undocumented migrants can qualify for these programs, but they don't qualify for food stamps. They don't qualify for Medicaid. They don't qualify for Medicare.
They qualified for those free flights that flew that illegal from New York to Georgia. And he's the guy who killed and tried to rape Laken Riley, right? Like that.
So this is where we're talking past each other.
Illegal immigrant like plane voucher program.
So yeah, they do they have all sorts of vouchers for housing and whatnot. So what you're referring to, what you're referring to is like they don't get full Medicaid coverage, but they qualify for what's called emergency Medicaid, meaning that any sort of emergency service, which is genuine anytime you show up to the hospital or whatever medical service you need, that is covered. Like if you show up and you need a surgery and you're an illegal, that's taken care of, and we foot the bill.
That has to be. Here's why I like that. And I don't like generally giving stuff to non-citizens. Like it's my overall stance.
What side is this from real quick, Zach? I'm sorry.
Hang on, let me hear what Woody likes.
If someone goes to the hospital in dire need of medical care, they should get it, right? Kyle could show up there and his wallet's not in his back pocket. We can't be like, fuck it, let him die. I haven't verified his citizenship. Like people should show up and get care, and then we can sort out the bills afterwards. Because I'm like, how many times have I like been in the water, been in the sky without a wallet? Right. So I hear the joke, but like you can't deny medical care before we've sorted out all that stuff.
I agree.
Sure. Like, who's your insurance provider? Okay.
Right?
Well, but I get what you're saying, Woody. And like, if someone shows up wounded or whatever, you have to take care of them. It's just inhuman to do otherwise. But what we can do is like not subsidize behaviors that incentivize people to come here for the end goal of getting free things. Like this is literally Bernie Sanders' position from the late 80s, where they asked him, "Is universal healthcare a possibility in the U.S.?" And he was like, "Yes. Universal health care is entirely possible in the United States, but we must have a secure border and deport illegals, because otherwise the money put into this fund will be spent on non-Americans and not Americans themselves."
You turned into Daniel Day-Lewis from
I'm telling you, I agree with like Bernie's position from the late 80s. Yeah, I want universal health care. I want that funded, but you can't have a robust welfare state that doesn't have strong borders. I don't know
where you're getting this idea that illegal immigrants are massively benefiting from our social welfare programs. The Cato Institute, which is like this right-wing libertarian group, did a study on immigration.
Libertarians love illegal immigration. Are you serious?
Years ago, and they determined that even illegal migrants, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't do anything to enforce our borders. That's not what I mean. I'm just saying like
the debit cards.
The debit cards are those are for asylum applicants. So they're
anyone can claim it. Anyone
can
claim
all say that shit. Well, that's our point.
But you have to change the asylum laws to fix that problem. That's not.
Yeah, and
we're about to.
That's an asylum law.
So we should change those laws because we're being taken advantage of.
With these asylum seekers /
libertarians like immigration and illegal immigration. I
think that 1% of them are actually real asylum seekers. I think they all are going to get scooped up with a big
I agree with you that our asylum
laws. I hope we use the military. I hope they send in the goddamn National Guard into communities. I hope they like fence them in the same way that you like flush game from the woods out into the open, and then you like scoop them up. I hope that happens
for asylum applicants.
All of them. Any of them who shouldn't be here.
Those
Anyone
people are in the
who
country
shouldn't
legally.
be here.
How are you going to deport someone that is
No.
Asylum applicants are not
and
here
mailed
illegally.
away.
They're not here illegally because we have laughable asylum laws.
Yes, that's why they tried to pass the bipartisan immigration bill that reformed our asylum laws.
So if we could, this is just like a thought experiment kind of question, Hutch. Like,
yes,
if you could press a button and every illegal immigrant is immediately deported to their country of origin, would you do it?
No.
Okay, so then we kind of well, hold on. We kind of just solved the whole conversation here, didn't we?
What else can the button do?
But
wait, I want to hear Taylor's answer. Do you think it'd be better?
Do
you think America would be a better place if we instantly lost those members of its population?
100%. Yeah, if we got rid of all illegals, suddenly the cost of housing goes down because the demand is lower. Suddenly the price that you're paid for middle and lower class wages increases because there's not this supply curve of infinite labor coming from the third world.
Size?
You want to talk classroom size, the pressure on our medical system, like all of these things would be alleviated immediately. And so the idea that you so you're saying Hutch, what I'm hearing is we can't deport them because of this these asylum laws, this, that, and the other. But then when push comes to shove, and I say, if you could remove this issue entirely, and not in some cruel way where they're kept in cages or something, just immediately magically deported, you say no.
No. Yeah.
Okay, so you have a political vested interest in these people pouring in.
No, I think there's a middle ground here. I feel like when we're talking about violent people who commit violent crimes, I have no problem deporting these people. My heart's not gonna bleed for them. When you talk about the economic consequences of getting rid of what you guys say 10 to 20 million people that are here illegally, that will cause inflation 100%. And so when I say that people support mass deportation programs on paper, this is what I mean. So let's say Trump is actually successful and he deports 10 to 20 million people, and then people go to the grocery store and an avocado costs $6. I really doubt that support for mass deportation is going to stay at 54% at that point. People say that they want to value protection, they like protectionist economic policies like tariffs because it's going to supposedly cause all this boon in domestic manufacturing. But the cost of the tariffs and the cost of this mass deportation, it will cause the price of goods and services to go up. And the MAGA theory is that people are going to value this whole made in America thing and protect our country. What
about 2018? 2018, Trump rolled out an enormous amount of tariffs, and the criticisms you're levying now are the same that happened then, where it was going to cause it was going to cause an enormous amount of inflation. Unemployment was going to be a problem, and none of that happened. What it did was actually bring a bit of manufacturing back home, and the problem with the tariff evaluation is Trump will say something like, we're gonna tariff Mexico at 3,000%. We're fucking them over, folks. And then analysts or journalists or whatever will look at that absurdly high number that he's using as a negotiation tactic, and then they will extrapolate data from the assumption that is where the baseline will be, and that's just not an accurate way to look at those situations.
Well, I'm just taking him at his word. His proposed policy was universal tariffs, 20% on all imports coming into the country. That will cause prices to go up. And we'll see how much, American Apparel, I think they did an experiment where they had some of their clothes that were outsourced to other countries. Those were cheaper, obviously. And then they introduced a line of clothing that was purely done made in America. Those costs were higher, and people overwhelmingly rejected the second choice.
Do you think that it's worthwhile to have do you think the lower cost potentially of American Apparel, just as an example, not that that's the extent of it, is worthwhile in keeping a permanent borderline slave class around to do these things? Meanwhile, these borderline slaves are doing work for free, and that's also lowering wages for Americans that would otherwise. What do you mean?
So NAFTA, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, we have free trade agreements with many countries that don't. Yeah,
I don't like the free trade shit. That's part of what I'm saying is we're getting free cheap shit from
consequences of free trade. People prefer lower prices. They do.
They do, but it's not worth. it's not worth it to maintain that so we can get cheap plastic shit that's low quality from China.
It's not worth it if you don't
Ideally,
do enough to
it would be better to have manufacturing.
So there are failures of like neoliberalism. There are failures of trade agreements that outsource manufacturing jobs and products or whatever to different countries. And then you leave these communities, especially like concentrated in Appalachia and the Midwest, like a lot of these cities became destitute because all these jobs were sent offshore. If you do a trade agreement, but you don't do anything to like remedy that suffering, then there are obviously going to be problems. And so if you're like,
that's what we're running into.
There are really good consequences of free trade. Like some countries just, they have much stronger industries when it comes to like agriculture or manufacturing or like different.
I don't see why we should have to settle for free trade.
Yeah.
No. I don't.
Free trade is a bad deal for us.
I feel like
free trade is the reason why the abject poverty, global poverty has.
Sorry, I've been waiting longer though.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
It's been. Oh no.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Do you want to go instead? I can take.
Fuck no.
All right. So my issue with free trade is this.